I thought our relationship was perfect. But this morning, when I randomly scrolled through Reddit, my world shattered. An anonymous post, yet I recognized it instantly. Every detail, every line. Only one person could have written this. Mason. My boyfriend. How do I leave my boyfriend peacefully? He's too attached. I don't want to hurt him, but I can't do this anymore. My hands started trembling. The screen blurred before my eyes. This couldn't be real. We were fine just yesterday. He sent me a good morning text. He told me he loved me. So what? What was I scrolled through the comments, my heart sinking with each word. Strangers were giving him advice. Ghost him. Be honest. Fake a job transfer. Gradually distance yourself. Every line felt like a knife stabbing into my chest. The most painful comment? You're not responsible for his feelings. Just rip the band-aid off. I set my phone down and collapsed onto the couch. Breathing became difficult. Mason wanted to leave me. But why? What did I do wrong? Was I really that attached? Was I a burden? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one more devastating than the last. I grabbed my phone again and checked our messages. Last week's conversations looked completely normal. I love you. Miss you. Can't wait to see you. Was it all fake? Was it all just acting? How long had he been feeling this way? Days? Weeks? Months? My phone buzzed, making me jump. Mason's text appeared on the screen. Dinner tonight? Miss your face. Miss your face? Seriously, while he was secretly asking strangers how to leave me. The audacity of it made my stomach turn. How could he type those words while planning his escape? How could he pretend everything was fine when he was already halfway out the door? My fingers were shaking, but I typed back, sure. 7. His reply came immediately. Perfect. Can't wait. Can't wait. Can't wait to what? Sit across from me and pretend? Practice his goodbye speech? I felt sick. I didn't know what I was going to do. Should I confront him? Should I pretend I knew nothing? Should I play along with his charade just like he'd been playing with mine? The anger started rising in my chest, mixing with the heartbreak until I couldn't tell which emotion was stronger. I spent the next few hours pacing around my apartment, creating scenarios in my head. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't his post. Maybe someone with a similar situation just happened to describe our relationship perfectly. But deep down, I knew. The username might have been anonymous. But the writing style, the specific details about our weekend routine, the mention of his fear of confrontation, it was all Mason. By afternoon, I had made my decision. I would sit across from him tonight. I would smile, I would act normal. And I would watch him, really watch him, to see if he could actually go through with leaving me while looking into my eyes. Because if there was one thing I knew about Mason, it was that he hated confrontation. He avoided difficult conversations like the plague. That's probably why he turned to Reddit in the first place. But one thing was certain. If Mason wanted to leave me peacefully, I wasn't going to make it easy for him. He owed me honesty. He owed me a real conversation. Not some cowardly disappearing act that strangers on the internet helped him plan. I looked around my apartment and saw traces of him everywhere. His favorite coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter from last weekend. His hoodie hung on the back of my desk chair. His toothbrush stood next to mine in the bathroom. We'd built a life together, or at least I thought we had. How could he just throw it all away without even talking to me first? The hours dragged by, painfully slow. I tried to distract myself with work, with TV, with anything that would stop my mind from racing. But nothing helped. Every few minutes, I found myself picking up my phone and rereading that post. Each time, it hurt just as much as the first. Around 5 o'clock, I realized I needed to prepare dinner. He liked pasta, specifically the homemade kind with the sauce I made from scratch. Should I still make his favorite, or would that make me look pathetic? Desperate? Too attached? Just like his post said, I decided to make it anyway. Not for him, but for me. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could still function, still act normal, even when my heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. As I chopped vegetables and stirred the sauce, I kept thinking about that word, attached. Was I too attached? I thought being in love meant wanting to spend time together, meant caring about someone deeply, meant making them a priority in your life. When did that become a bad thing? When did loving someone fully become something to run away from? Maybe Mason was right. Maybe I did love him too much. Maybe I scared him with the intensity of my feelings. Or maybe he never felt the same way about me in the first place, and I was just too blind to see it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mason. Should I bring wine? I stared at the message for a long moment. He sounded so casual, so normal. Like he wasn't planning to leave, like he wasn't asking strangers how to break my heart with minimal damage. I typed back, if you want. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, you sure you're okay? The irony almost made me laugh. He was asking if I was okay while planning his exit strategy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I wrote, just tired. See you at 7. I set the table carefully. 2 plates, 2 wine glasses, candles in the center. Everything perfect, just like he liked it. But nothing felt right. Every movement felt mechanical, like I was going through the motions as a life that was already over. 6:30 came, then 6:45. I changed my clothes 3 times, trying to find something that didn't look like I was trying too hard or not trying enough. I settled on his favorite shirt of mine, a simple blue button-down that he always said brought out my eyes. If this was going to be one of our last dinners together, I might as well look good. At exactly 7 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, forced a smile onto my face and walked to the door. My hand hesitated on the doorknob for just a second. Once I opened this door, there was no going back. I would have to sit through this dinner knowing what I knew, watching him lie to my face, but I had to know. I had to see if he could really do it, if he could really look at me and pretend everything was fine while planning his peaceful escape. I opened the door. Mason stood in my doorway looking exactly like he always did. Black leather jacket over a gray shirt, that easy smile on his face, and a bouquet of red roses in his hand. For a split second, seeing him made me forget about the post. He looked so genuine, so happy to see me, that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. For you, Leo, he said, extending the flowers toward me. I took them, my fingers brushing against his. The roses smelled sweet, but I couldn't feel anything, just numbness. Just this hollow emptiness where my feelings should have been. I managed to smile, though it felt like my face might crack from the effort. They're beautiful. Come in. He stepped inside, shrugging off his jacket and hanging it on the hook by the door. The same hook he'd used dozens of times before. Everything about this felt routine, familiar, safe. Except nothing was safe anymore. Something smells incredible, he said, following me into the kitchen. Is that your homemade pasta sauce? You know it is. Your favorite. He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. This was usually my favorite moment. When he held me like this, when I could feel his warmth against my back, when everything felt right in the world. But tonight his touch felt different. Foreign, like hugging a stranger. You're the best, he murmured into my neck. The best. I wanted to turn around and ask him, if I'm so great, why are you planning to leave? But I didn't. Instead, I carefully extracted myself from his embrace and turned to the stove. Go sit down. Dinner's almost ready. He poured us both wine while I plated the pasta. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I'd expected to be shaking, to drop something, to give myself away somehow. But apparently, I was just as good at acting as he was. We sat down across from each other. He raised his glass. To us, he said. To us. The words felt like mockery. I clinked my glass against his anyway and took a long drink. The wine burned going down, but it was a welcome distraction from the burning in my chest. Mason took his first bite and his eyes lit up. This is incredible. Seriously, Leo, you've outdone yourself. Thanks. He paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. You okay? You seem quiet tonight. Of course I seemed quiet. I was sitting across from someone who was secretly planning to leave me. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. Just a long day at work, I lied, surprised at how easily the words came. You know how it is. Want to talk about it? The concern in his voice sounded so real. His eyes searched my face like he actually cared. Like he actually wanted to know what was bothering me. How was he this good at pretending? Nothing worth talking about. How was your day? And just like that, we fell into normal conversation. He told me about his meeting with a difficult client, about his coworkers' terrible jokes, about the new coffee shop that opened near his office. I listened and nodded and asked follow-up questions, playing my part perfectly. Anyone watching us would think we were just another happy couple having dinner together. But I was watching him carefully, studying every expression, every gesture, looking for cracks in his performance, searching for signs that he was struggling with what he was hiding from me. I found nothing. He was flawless. After dinner, we moved to the couch. He put on some show we'd been watching together. Another sign of normalcy, of continuity, of a relationship that was supposed to have a future. He pulled me against his side, his arm around my shoulders, and I let him. I even rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and calm. "This is nice," he said softly, running his fingers through my hair. "I needed this tonight." "You needed this?" I thought. "You needed to come here and pretend everything's fine while you're planning your exit?" The anger flared again, hot and sharp. "Mason," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. We're good, right? You and me." His hand stilled in my hair for just a moment. Just one tiny moment of hesitation that anyone else might have missed. But I was watching for it. "Of course we are," he said, resuming his gentle movements. "Why would you ask that?" "Just making sure." He shifted so he could look at me directly. His eyes met mine, steady and clear. "Leo, you don't have to worry. I'm happy. We're happy." The lie came so smoothly, so convincingly. I almost believed him. Almost. "Good," I said. "I'm happy too." Another lie. We were both lying now, sitting inches apart and lying straight to each other's faces. He kissed my forehead, then my nose, then my lips. Soft and sweet. Like he meant it. Like he loved me. And maybe he did, in his own way. Maybe you could love someone and still stand to leave them. Maybe I just loved him more than he loved me. And that was the problem. "I should tell you something," he said suddenly. My heart stopped. Was this it? Was he actually going to be honest? Was he going to tell me about the post, about his doubts, about wanting to leave? "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking about us a lot lately." Here it comes, I thought. Here's where he ends it. "And I realized how lucky I am," he continued, "to have you, to have this. Sometimes I forget to tell you that." I stared at him. That wasn't what I expected. That was the opposite of what I expected. "Mason, I mean it. Leo, you're patient with me, you're kind, you make me laugh. I don't say it enough, but I appreciate you. I really do." Was this guilt talking? Was he trying to soften the blow before he left? Or was he trying to convince himself to stay? I couldn't tell anymore. Nothing made sense. "I appreciate you too," I managed to say. He pulled me closer, holding me tight. I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek. Still steady, still calm. Meanwhile, mine was racing, pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in comfortable silence, or what should have been comfortable silence. But every second felt like torture. Every gentle touch felt like a lie. Every whispered, "I love you," felt hollow. When he finally left around midnight, he kissed me goodbye at the door. "Same time next week?" he asked. Next week? He was already planning next week. Like this wasn't ending. Like he wasn't planning to leave. "Sure," I said. "I love you, Leo. I love you too." He walked away, and I closed the door. Then I leaned against it and slid down to the floor. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. I just sat there in the dark, wondering how long he was going to keep pretending before he finally worked up the courage to leave me peacefully. The next morning started with a text from Mason, a picture of his coffee cup with a message, "Thinking of you," then another, "Last night was perfect." Perfect. The word made my stomach turn. I typed back a simple heart emoji and set my phone down. Work was impossible to focus on. I kept checking Reddit, reading through his post again and again, memorizing the comments. Some told him to have an honest conversation. Others suggested gradually pulling away. One commenter wrote a detailed plan about how to phase out a relationship over several weeks to minimize drama. Was that what he was doing? Phasing me out? Making our time together gradually less frequent until I barely noticed he was gone? My friend River called during lunch break. "Hey, you sound weird. Everything okay?" Define okay. "Leo, what happened?" I almost told him. Almost explained the whole thing, but the words caught in my throat. Saying it out loud would make it real. Just stressed about work. I'll call you later. You sure? Because you sound, I'm fine. Really, another lie. I was getting good at those. That evening Mason called. Wanna grab dinner tomorrow? There's this new Thai place I've been wanting to try. Tomorrow. He wanted to see me tomorrow. Not phasing out yet apparently. Can't tomorrow, I said. Maybe this weekend? Oh. He sounded disappointed. Okay, yeah. Weekend works. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. He told me about his day. I pretended to care. When we hung up, I felt exhausted. The following day, I drove past the Thai restaurant he'd mentioned. I told myself I was just curious, that I wasn't checking up on him. But when I saw him through the window sitting with someone else, a guy I didn't recognize, both of them laughing, something inside me snapped. He'd made plans with someone else instead. Or maybe he'd already had these plans and lied about wanting to take me. Either way, it was another deception. Another crack in the foundation. I didn't confront him about it. I just drove home and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. By Saturday, I'd made up my mind. When Mason arrived at my apartment that afternoon, carrying takeout from my favorite Chinese place, I'd had enough of pretending. Mason, we need to talk. He set the food down on the counter, his smile faltering. That sounds serious. It is. Sit down. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The distance between us felt symbolic somehow. He looked nervous, his fingers drumming against his knee. What's going on, Leo? You've been acting strange all week. I found your Reddit post. The color drained from his face. His fingers stopped moving. For several seconds he just stared at me, mouth slightly open, clearly trying to process what I'd just said. What post? The words came out weak, unconvincing. I pulled out my phone, opened Reddit and showed him the screen. This one. How do I leave my boyfriend peacefully? Posted 4 days ago. Want to explain? He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Leo, don't bother making excuses. I read the whole thing. Every comment, every suggestion about how to dump me without causing a scene. It's not what you think. Really? Because it seems pretty straightforward to me. You want out? You're too scared to tell me. So you asked strangers for advice instead of talking to your actual boyfriend. He ran his hands through his hair, the gesture he always made when stressed. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. Confused about what? About us. About me. About everything. His voice rose. About whether I'm good enough for you. Whether I can give you what you need. Whether. So you decided to leave instead of talking to me about it. I didn't decide anything. That's why I made the post. I was trying to figure things out. I stood up, needing distance from him. You know what hurts the most? It's not that you were thinking about leaving. It's that you lied to me. You came here last week with flowers and smiles and told me how lucky you were to have me. All while planning your escape. I meant those things. Did you? Or was it just guilt talking? Were you trying to make yourself feel better about what you were planning to do? He stood too, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. Leo, please listen to me. I was scared. I've never felt this way about anyone before. It terrified me. You're so sure about us, so committed, and I didn't know if I could match that. If I could be what you needed me to be. So your solution was to run away? I wasn't running. I was trying to process my feelings. By asking strangers how to leave me peacefully? That's not processing, Mason. That's planning. That's giving up without even trying to fix whatever's broken. His eyes were getting red, but I couldn't feel sympathy. Not yet. Not when my own hurt was still so raw. I made a mistake, he said quietly. I should have come to you. I should have been honest about my fears instead of hiding them. Yes, you should have. But you didn't. Instead, you pretended everything was fine while secretly looking for the exit. I don't want to leave you. Then why did you ask how to do it peacefully? He was silent. We both knew the answer. In that moment of fear and doubt, some part of him had wanted out, had been looking for the easiest way to escape. I think you should go, I said, my voice calmer now. Resigned. Leo, no. Let me explain. You just did. You were scared, so you looked for a way out. I get it. I'm too much. Too attached. Too intense. Exactly like your post said. That's not fair. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? Because those were your words, Mason. On Reddit. For everyone to see except me. He took a step toward me, desperation in his eyes. Please don't do this. We can work through this. I want to work through this. Do you? Or do you just not want to be the bad guy? Do you just want to avoid the difficult conversation you've been dreading? That's not true, isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted me to do this. To be the one who ends it. So you could tell yourself and everyone else that you tried, but I was the one who gave up. Leo, go Mason. Just go. He stood there for a long moment, looking like he wanted to argue, but he must have seen something in my expression that told him it was pointless. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. I really do love you. I hope you believe that. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't know what I believed anymore. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by the Chinese food he'd brought, the flowers from last week now wilting in their vase, his forgotten hoodie still on my mare, and finally, I let myself cry. The silence in my apartment after Mason left was deafening. Every corner held memories of him. His favorite coffee mug still sitting on the kitchen counter, his hoodie draped over my desk chair, his scent lingering on my pillows. I wanted these reminders gone, wanted to erase every trace of him, but at the same time I couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. Throwing away his things would make the breakup real final, and I wasn't ready for that yet. 1 week passed, then 2. Mason didn't contact me. No texts, no calls, no explanation. It was like he'd simply accepted my decision and moved on with his life. Like our entire relationship meant nothing to him. I tried to convince myself I didn't miss him. Tried to tell myself I was better off without someone who'd been planning to leave me. But every night when I climbed into bed alone, everything came rushing back. His laugh, the way he touched the small of my back when we walked together, how he said my name, drawing out the E sound just slightly. My phone stayed silent. On social media, he hadn't unfollowed me, but he stopped viewing my stories. We'd become strangers occupying the same digital space, carefully avoiding acknowledgement of each other's existence. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office, anything to avoid going home to that quiet apartment full of ghosts. My coworkers noticed but didn't ask questions. I must have looked terrible. Dark circles under my eyes, clothes wrinkled from sleeping on the couch, because my bed smelled too much like him. River, my best friend, finally cornered me at a coffee shop 2 weeks after the breakup. I'd been avoiding his calls, sending short texts claiming I was busy, but he knew me too well to buy that excuse. You look awful, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thanks, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious, Leo. When's the last time you actually slept? Or ate a real meal? I shrugged, stirring my coffee even though I hadn't added anything to it. I'm fine. You're not fine. Talk to me. What happened? So I told him everything. The Reddit post, the dinner lies, the confrontation, Mason leaving. River listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and crossed his arms. He's a coward. That's a bit harsh. No, it's accurate. Who does that? Who asks strangers how to dump their boyfriend instead of having an honest conversation? He treated you like a problem to be solved, not a person he supposedly loved. He was scared. So what? Everyone gets scared in relationships. That doesn't give him the right to lie to your face while planning his exit strategy. River leaned forward, his voice softening. You deserve better than that, Leo. You deserve someone who chooses you even when things get difficult. But what if I was too much? What if he was right about me being too attached? Stop that. Don't let his issues become your insecurities. There's nothing wrong with loving someone fully. The problem isn't that you cared too much. It's that he couldn't handle being cared for. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to accept that this wasn't my fault. But late at night when I couldn't sleep, all the doubts crept back in. 3 days later, I was at the grocery store, mindlessly pushing my cart through the produce section, when I saw him. Mason. He was standing near the apples with another guy, tall, dark hair, wearing a leather jacket similar to the one Mason always wore. They were laughing about something, completely comfortable with each other. The other guy reached out and adjusted Mason's collar, and Mason smiled at him with an ease I recognized. That was how he used to look at me. My chest tightened. I abandoned my cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out, barely making it to my car before the panic hits. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. He'd moved on already, 2 weeks, and he'd found someone new. Or maybe this wasn't new. Maybe this was why he'd wanted to leave in the first place. I drove home in a daze, parked in my usual spot, and went inside. The apartment felt smaller somehow, the walls closing in. I sat on the floor with my back against the door and waited for tears that never came. Just emptiness. Just this vast, hollow feeling, where my heart used to be. Days blurred together. I went to work, came home, stared at my phone, went to bed. Repeat. My boss asked if everything was okay. I lied and said it was. My mom called to check in. I lied to her too. Everyone got the same answer. I'm fine. Then, exactly 3 weeks after our fight, my phone buzzed with a text from Mason. Can we talk? I stared at the message for 10 minutes. What could he possibly want to talk about now? To tell me about his new boyfriend? To get closure? To retrieve his forgotten belonging? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore him completely, to let him experience the silence I'd been drowning in. But another part, a pathetic, hopeful part, wanted to know what he had to say. I typed. There's nothing left to say. The 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing, deleting, typing again. Finally, Leo, please. I made a mistake. I miss you. Miss me? Now. After I'd seen him laughing with someone else like I'd never existed, I threw my phone across the room. It hit the couch cushion and bounced onto the floor. I left it there, walked to my bedroom, and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. But later that night, when sleep still wouldn't come, I retrieved my phone and read his message again. I made a mistake. 3 words that could mean everything or nothing. Was he really sorry? Or did things not work out with the new guy and now I was the backup plan? The smart thing would be to block his number and move on, to protect myself from more hurt. But I'd never been particularly smart when it came to Mason. At 3 in the morning I finally replied, if you really miss me, prove it. I sent it before I could change my mind, then turned off my phone and buried it under my pillow. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to wait around watching for his response. When I woke up 6 hours later, my phone was full of notifications. Missed calls from Mason, voicemails, more texts. But I didn't open any of them. Not yet. I got up, showered for the first time in 3 days, and made myself breakfast. If Mason wanted to prove something, he could wait. He could experience a fraction of the uncertainty I'd been living with. And if he gave up easily, well, that would tell me everything I needed to know about how much I actually meant to him. The ball was in his court now. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had some control over what happened next. The doorbell rang at 7 in the morning, jolting me awake. I'd finally managed to fall asleep around 5. My phone still buried under my pillow where I'd left it. The ringing came again, more insistent this time. I stumbled to the door, still half asleep, expecting a delivery or maybe my landlord. Instead, Mason stood in the hallway looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His eyes were bloodshot and puffy. His hair stuck up at odd angles and he was wearing the same clothes from his Instagram post yesterday. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. You said to prove it, he said, his voice rough and broken. So I'm here. I stood there, hand on the doorframe, trying to process this. It's 7 in the morning. I know. I've been outside since midnight. I didn't want to wake you, but I couldn't wait anymore. You've been outside for 7 hours? He nodded, holding up a large envelope. I wrote you something. Everything I should have said weeks ago. Everything I've been too scared to admit. His hands were shaking. Can I please come in? I hesitated, every rational part of my brain screaming that this was a bad idea. But I stepped aside anyway. Mason walked in slowly, like he was afraid the floor might collapse under him. He didn't sit down, just stood in the middle of my living room, clutching that envelope like a lifeline. Here, he said, extending it toward me. Read it. All of it. And if you still want me to leave after, I will. I'll never bother you again. I took the envelope. It was thick, stuffed with pages and pages of what looked like handwritten notes. My hands trembled as I opened it and pulled out the first sheet. The letter started simply, Leo, I'm sorry. But it didn't stop there. Page after page, Mason had poured out everything. He wrote about his childhood, about watching his parents' marriage fall apart because his father couldn't handle his mother's depression, about learning early that love was something that hurt people, that attachment was dangerous, that leaving was easier than staying. He wrote about meeting me, about how terrified he'd been when he realized he was falling in love, how every morning he woke up happy to see my text and that happiness scared him more than anything else in his life. I kept waiting for it to go wrong, he'd written. I kept waiting for you to see through me and realize I wasn't worth your time. And when that didn't happen, when you just kept loving me anyway, I panicked. I convinced myself you were too good for me, that I'd inevitably disappoint you, that leaving first would hurt less than being left. My throat tightened as I read. The words were raw, honest in a way Mason had never been with me before. That Reddit post was my cowardice, he continued. I wanted strangers to tell me it was okay to run. I wanted permission to be selfish. But what I got instead was a wake-up call. Reading those comments, seeing people reduce our relationship to a problem with a simple solution, it made me sick because you're not a problem to solve. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I almost threw it away because I was too scared to be vulnerable. The final page made my vision blur with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to take me back. I just need you to know that losing you has been the worst experience of my life. I see you everywhere, in every song on the radio, in every coffee shop, in every sunset. I saw you at the grocery store last week, and you looked at me like I was a stranger, and I deserved that. But it broke something in me that I don't think can be fixed without you. I set the letter down, my hands shaking. Mason was watching me, tears streaming down his face. The guy you saw me with, he said quietly, that's my cousin Derek. He flew in from Seattle because I called him at 2 in the morning having a breakdown about losing you. He's been staying at my place trying to talk sense into me. Your cousin? I know how it must have looked. But Leo, there's no one else. There's never been anyone else. There's only you. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to protect myself from more potential hurt. But looking at him now, truly vulnerable for maybe the first time since I'd known him, I couldn't hold on to that anger. Why didn't you just talk to me? I asked, my voice cracking. Why did you have to make that post? Why did you have to lie? Because I'm an idiot who thought he could handle everything alone. Because I was raised to believe that showing fear was showing weakness. Because I've spent my whole life running from anything that made me feel too much, and you made me feel everything. He took a shaky breath. I'm in therapy now. Started last week. My therapist says I have attachment issues stemming from childhood trauma, which sounds like psychology jargon but apparently explains why I sabotage good things in my life. You're really in therapy? Twice a week. I have homework and everything. He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm trying to fix myself, Leo, not because I think it'll make you take me back, but because I need to. I need to understand why I hurt you so I never do it again. To anyone. I sank onto the couch, the letter still in my hands. I saw that post and felt like my entire world ended. Like everything between us had been a lie. It wasn't. None of it was a lie. My feelings for you have always been real. It was just my fear that got in the way. And what about now? What if you get scared again? What if 3 months from now you decide this is too hard and bail? He knelt in front of me, looking directly into my eyes. Then I'll tell you I'm scared. I'll talk to you about it instead of running to strangers on the internet. I'll fight through it instead of running away. I swear to you, Leo, if you give me another chance, I'll spend every day proving that I choose you. No matter how scared I get. That's a big promise. I know, but I mean it. You asked me to prove it, and I will. However long it takes. I looked at this man, kneeling in front of me, broken, honest, real in a way he'd never allowed himself to be before. He'd written me a novel's worth of his deepest fears and regrets. He sought professional help. He'd shown up at my door after spending the night in a hallway. Stand up, I said quietly. He did, looking uncertain. I stood too, closing the distance between us. If we do this, if I give you another chance, things have to be different. No more hiding. No more running. We talk about everything, even when it's uncomfortable. Yes. Anything. And you keep going to therapy. I will. And you have to be patient with me. Because trust isn't something I can just switch back on. I understand. I took a deep breath. Okay, we can try again. But Mason, I'm serious. One more lie, one more secret, and we're done. Permanently. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. Thank you. Thank you. I won't mess this up again. I promise. I held him back, feeling his heart racing against my chest, and hoped this time would be different. The first week after taking Mason back was strange. We didn't fall back into our old routine. Couldn't really. Too much had happened. Instead, we had to learn how to be together all over again. But with honesty this time. Mason came over every day but not to stay. He'd arrive in the afternoon and we'd talk. Really talk about his therapy sessions, about what his counselor was teaching him regarding communication and vulnerability, about my lingering trust issues and how some days I still checked his phone when he wasn't looking. Hating myself for it but unable to stop. I don't blame you, he said when I finally admitted it. I broke your trust. You need time to rebuild it. He started leaving his phone unlocked around me, volunteered his passwords without me asking, showed me his therapy homework, worksheets about identifying emotional triggers and practicing healthy communication. On the 8th day, River agreed to meet us for coffee. He'd been skeptical when I told him I was giving Mason another chance, and I needed my best friend's approval, even if I wouldn't admit it out loud. Mason looked nervous the entire drive there. What if he hates me? He probably does hate you a little. You hurt his best friend. That's fair. He drummed his fingers on his knee. I deserve that. River was already at the coffee shop when we arrived, sitting at a corner table with his arms crossed. His expression was neutral, but I knew him well enough to recognize the protective edge in his eyes. River, thanks for meeting us, I said, sliding into the seat beside him. Mason. River's tone was cool. Hi. Thanks for giving me a chance. I didn't give you anything. I'm here for Leo, not you. River turned to me. Are you sure about this? I am, I said more confidently than I felt. River studied Mason for a long moment. What makes you think you deserve a second chance? Mason didn't flinch. I don't. I messed up badly. I hurt Leo in ways I'll probably spend years trying to make up for. But I'm willing to put in the work. I'm in therapy, I'm learning how to communicate better, and I'm committed to being honest even when it's terrifying. Words are easy. Actions matter. I know. That's why I'm showing up every day. That's why I'm being completely transparent about everything. My therapy, my struggles, my fears. I can't take back what I did, but I can make sure it never happens again. River glanced at me, then back at Mason. If you hurt him again, we're going to have problems. Clear? Crystal clear. The tension eased slightly. After that, we talked for an hour, River grilling Mason about his therapy and his plans for handling future conflicts. By the end, River still wasn't Mason's biggest fan, but he did glaring. Just make sure he knows how lucky he is, River told me as we were leaving. Oh, I do, Mason said quickly. Trust me, I know exactly how lucky I am. 2 weeks in, Mason surprised me with tickets to a concert. A band we'd talked about seeing months ago but never got around to. We went on a Friday night and for a few hours everything felt almost normal. He held my hand during the slow songs, sang off-key during the fast ones, bought me overpriced venue snacks because he remembered I liked them. On the drive home he reached over and squeezed my hand. This was nice. It was. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think you'll ever fully trust me again? The question caught me off guard. I thought about lying, about giving him the reassurance he was clearly seeking. But we'd promised honesty. I don't know, I admitted. Some days I feel like we're going to be okay. Other days I remember that post and feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. He nodded slowly. That's fair. I can live with that uncertainty if it means you're willing to keep trying, even if it takes months, years, however long you need. By the 1-month mark, we'd established new patterns. Mason stayed over sometimes, but always asked first instead of assuming. We had a rule. If something bothered either of us, we had to bring it up within 24 hours. No festering. No silent resentment. He told me when he had bad therapy sessions, when his old fears crept back in. I told him when I felt insecure, when I needed extra reassurance. It wasn't always pretty. We had arguments, moments where we both got frustrated with the slow pace of healing, but we worked through them. One Saturday afternoon, we were at the park, sitting on a bench and watching kids play on the playground. The weather was perfect, clear blue sky, gentle breeze, The kind of day that makes you forget your problems for a while. Leo? Thank you. I turned to look at him. For what? For not giving up on me. For believing I could change when I didn't believe it myself. You're doing the work. I'm just here supporting you. Still. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. I wrote you something again. Another letter, a different kind this time. I opened it. Inside was a single page, written in his careful handwriting. This is my commitment to you. It read. I commit to choosing you every single day, even when it's hard. I commit to honest communication, even when I'm scared of your reaction. I commit to therapy and personal growth, not just for you but for myself. I commit to building a future where you never have to question whether I'm all in. Because I am. Completely. Forever. Below his signature, he'd added a postscript. P.S. I deleted Reddit entirely. Not just the account, the whole app. You're the only sounding board I need. I laughed through the tears that had started falling. You didn't have to delete the whole app. Yes, I did. It represented everything I did wrong. I don't need it. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in the envelope. I'm keeping this. Good. I want you to have proof. Something tangible to look at when you're doubting whether this is real. We sat there for a while longer, his arm around my shoulders, watching the world move around us. Things weren't perfect. We still had hard days, moments of doubt, conversations that left us both emotionally exhausted. But we were trying, both of us genuinely trying. That evening back at my apartment, Mason helped me cook dinner. We worked side by side in the kitchen, bumping hips and stealing tastes from each other's spoons, and it felt right. Like maybe we really could make this work. After we ate, we ended up on the couch, tangled together, half watching a movie neither of us cared about. Hey Leo, yeah, I love you, more than I've ever loved anything. I love you too, and this time, when he said it, I believed him completely. Not because the hurt had disappeared or because I'd forgotten what happened, but because he'd proven day after day that he meant it. That he was choosing me, choosing us, choosing to be better. We had a long way to go. Trust would take time to fully rebuild. But for the first time since finding that Reddit post, I felt hopeful about our future. Mason was worth fighting for. We were worth fighting for, and that was enough.